Mental health is one thing in life that we deal with, whether good or bad. Going through chronic pain alone can impact your mental health greatly. Having multiple diagnoses can put a strain on your mental capacity to process and deal with all of it. Ha- Today's guest will share her story with the struggle of pain for 27 years and 11 years being misdiagnosed. Are you ready for another chronic pain conversation? Let's go. Hello and welcome to Chronic Pain Conversations. My name is Sharifa McLaren, and this is my lovely co-host, Kalila Ruzwell. This is a show where we have open and honest dialogue about chronic pain. We share on experiences, acknowledge a wide variety of chronic pain diagnoses, and look at ways to manage chronic pain. But it is that time again. We want to know pain or pleasure today, Kalila.
This looks like a 10, but it feels like a 2.
You look fabulous, by the way.
Like I said, this
All
looks
that
like a
jazz.
10.
Yeah.
But this feels like a 2. Oh, Mama, I have had a really interesting week. My IBS has flared up so bad that I've been in bed for just days.
Right.
I haven't been able to eat. I was throwing up water. My incontinence wasn't kicking in. And I was trying to go back and try and figure out what set this all off. I went out with some friends and I think going out with the friends was the straw that broke the camel's back. But there's been this stress on my body with the moving. My mom, she fell on the bus last week. That stressed me out, not even being in the same country as her, that if something happened,
you
to
would
be able
be
to
there.
get back to her. Just trying to figure out how I'm going to proceed with all of these different options and which one's the best one. And, it's funny that I'm having this conversation right now because it actually ties into our conversation today about mental health. And one of the things that we don't do is correlate how our mental health can affect our physical health.
Right.
And so I am just I'm always happy. But I've been going through some depression and I've been going through some struggles. And so I just this is why we do it. Stop just seeing the person on the outside, understand what's going on the inside. And I can make myself look pretty for a show, but it doesn't mean that everything body
inside
is pretty inside. But I feel like it too. What about you, Mama? What is
I am like a 5, so I'm okay.
Okay.
But like you, mentally, I've been struggling for the past week. I haven't really said anything, but I've been lacking sleep. Usually I feel like I should have been lacking sleep when dad first passed, but now I'm lacking sleep and I've been really in my feelings emotionally. I've been driving Kalila places and I've had to pull over to just cry.
Oh,
yeah, and I spazzed out yesterday on somebody, which I had good reason to, but it's just, I think now it's really hitting me. And I couldn't tell you why, but it's going to be like that. I know for a fact, but I think this show came at the right time because, mentally it's draining. And even with chronic pain, having to deal with our actual health is an add-on to, how our mental capacity takes it. So I'm excited about the show. I think we can maybe ourselves take something from it.
Yeah, I love these kind of conversations, especially because we get really more in depth. And what's really funny is when you go back and you look at some of our top shows, mental health is right up there.
Yeah.
So today, what's really interesting, in season 1, we had just the conversation about it. And today we get to actually have somebody come on. So Did you know, Sharifa, that pain can increase mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and panic disorders, and even the inability to sleep? And that explains like and that correlates a lot with our pains and our aches and other
Mm-hmm.
things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's one thing that has been going on with my stomach. But today I'm just like really blessed. So I know our guest personally. I met her, funny enough, at a chronic pain fibromyalgia case study,
Wow.
only to find out that she is the sister-in-law to somebody that I actually ministered with and who I consider a friend, like who's friend and family to me. And so this is so amazing. So our guest name is Stephanie Dixon. And Stephanie is been misdiagnosed for her first 11 years of her 27 years going on, her pain going on. She's 44, so 77 babies. And she deals with things like fibromyalgia, anxiety, depression. She's had severe restless leg syndrome. She's been dealing with degenerate disc issues. She has IBS just like me. She actually, when she was giving us her information, she said that she has something called CFS diagnosis. I don't know what that is, so I want to learn about that today as well. But she's a mom. She is God fearing. She is just a lovely person. And I can just personally testify that, you know, there are days where we don't talk for periods of time. And I'll just get a text from her, and it's just love. It's just, how can I support you? How can I give towards, you know, the cause? You know, just sending you love. God's got your back. And she has really worked very hard to put herself in a mental state and stay as positive as she can, even though she's told me stories about her own struggles. And this is why I love to call, you know, we have our fibro warriors, but I love to use words like chronic pain conquerors, because she is such an example of this word. So I just want to come on, and I'm going to invite her on right now. Miss Stephanie Dixon, come on to our show, my love. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. This is such an awesome platform to be able to share and to empower others and just, be able to share our story. This is something that's been missing in our community. It's unfortunate that I have to say we have a community, but it's it's
We do.
it's really a blessing to have things like this and platforms like this to share with others. So thank you for this
Thank you
opportunity.
for coming. We are so thankful that you decided to come on. So, before we kind of get into the mental health, I did address a couple of the issues. But can you tell us from your perspective, so that people understand before we get into the mental health aspect of it, what are your conditions, and you know, what are the medical diagnoses about it, and can you like elaborate on what this CFS is? I'd really love to hear about that.
Sure. So I realized I left out a few things. So just to give a bit of a background, I'm 44 years old. I I was misdiagnosed the first 11 years. So I was 17 when chronic pain. I'm going to use the word hit me because that's what it felt like. Um, in the years, the first diagnosis came at 28 of fibromyalgia, but over the years, things like anxiety and depression came up. CFC is chronic fatigue syndrome, originally known as myoencephalitis, that is a severe form of fatigue that oftentimes gets misdiagnosed with fibro. I happen to have both of them. I do also have multiple environmental and food sensitivities. IBS-C. IBS-C is typically more the constipation aspect of things. The severe restless leg syndrome. So what that looks like, a lot of people, when they hear restless leg, they think of twitching legs at night. The severe form of restless leg means that the muscles are twitching all throughout the day. They're not just in your legs, it's throughout your entire body. And that in fact, your muscles need to be in some form of movement. So things like sitting and standing for periods of time. I say long period, but for me, a long period could be 20 minutes, actually has the muscles seize and become sore and painful. So like being in motion is very helpful. Degenerative disc disease and stenosis in my neck. So that's more recent. So most of these things came out, these diagnoses came after I found a specialist in my 26th year of this. So the only diagnoses I had from 28 to 40 basically was anxiety, depression, fibromyalgia, and IBS. Okay, and so I discovered some of these things for myself as well. What was the other question? That was kind of the background. What else did you want to know about it?
Well, you answered the question perfectly.
Okay.
Amazing. Would you mind sharing your journey on how your chronic pain issues developed, like the causes and stuff like that, and what made you go seek further information about what was really going on with you?
Okay, so at this time, I just want to have a disclaimer that the source of my pain is something that I've been researching. Okay, so as a 16-year-old, the only typically what they say with a lot of these pain conditions, particularly fibromyalgia, is that there is a root, like some event, whether it be a accident or an emotional event that triggers it. Okay. In my research around myself, the trigger that occurred at the age of 16, 17 was unfortunately, and this is very controversial right now, but I am going to say it because it is my experience. So I just want people to understand that. So what occurred for me at the age of 16 is that due to an event, there was a mass inoculation, and we received 5 vaccines at the same time, and I did not respond well. And within 6 months of that event, I had difficulties getting out of bed. And so that would have been the chronic fatigue that now that I know that I've done this research and have looked into it, in that I wasn't able to lift my head out of bed. My body was in so much pain that I literally could not lift it. And I had difficulties walking. So at the beginning of this journey, and I didn't know any of this, I just literally, as a teenager, started feeling like my body was breaking down on me. I, at that point in time, was basically dismissed because, of course, teenagers are just silly little kids. So I did not have any medical professionals looking into the whole picture of why I was having these problems, why the fatigue was so severe that I couldn't stay awake, why it was so severe that in doing any kind of physical activity, including walking, which was challenging. So, you know, walking down the hallway at my school, why I would then need to go and sleep. So they just did not look into these things for me at the time because it was very, you know, kids don't have these problems. Fibromyalgia in particular was looked at as something that only old women had. So no one ever looked into it. So over the years of that 11 years, I saw about 4 different family doctors, of which the only thing that came up was anxiety and depression. That must be what it is. That perhaps I needed orthotics to help me walk. And the chronic fatigue, no, that came later. The diagnosis of that came later. How I actually got my fibromyalgia diagnosis was because the person I was working with my feet, my chiropodist, he said something else is wrong here because, you know, insoles would be helping your ability to walk. And the fact that you're having difficulties doing simple things throughout the day, showering, cooking, cleaning, you know, there's something else going on. And he wrote a script to my doctor saying, you need to check a neurologist or a rheumatologist. And my doctor said to me, we'll send you to rule it out because you don't have that. And in fact, that's how the first diagnosis came in. So it was a very challenging time in my 20s to address actually the mental health aspect of it at that time. I believed that I was crazy, and that really fed into, and I use that word because that's
how you felt,
what it felt like at the time, because no one believed that I was actually in the amount of pain that I was in, and no one believed that I needed any assistance. And so I really pushed myself to survive, but mental health wise, what that created was this picture that I wasn't to be alive. And I literally did not create life. So usually as a teenager, you have all these dreams of who you're going to be, what you're going to do with your life. And I literally at the age of 17 said, well, tomorrow you're just not going to wake up. And so every day was like almost a disappointment, to be honest with you, because I did not want to wake up in that kind of pain. And I wasn't able to create for myself a balance in mind. And I lived very, I really can't tell you how I got through, because it was a serious depression to constantly be thinking that death was at my door and that there was no life to live. So I'm truly grateful for God's grace, because I spent 11 years in darkness saying that there's, it's all in your head. There's all of this pain that you're experiencing, your inability to even see. I had difficulties with my eyes, just difficulties with driving. Unfortunately, during that time in my 20s, because they did not know and they weren't not dealing with things, I was put on medication for my anxiety. And I didn't know at the time that I actually, I don't do well with medication. So the top, when they have these, all the symptoms, not the symptoms, sorry, one of the things for fibro is finding words, not symptoms, but the result of medication. I'm going to explain it rather than I've lost the word. So, when you have all these different things that can occur due to medications, I actually experience the ones that people don't. So unfortunately for me, being on the medication for my anxiety actually made my fatigue worse. And I found myself driving into oncoming traffic, not being able to stay awake for more than 5-10 minutes at a time, always needing to close my eyes. So I came off of that. So it's been an interesting journey just in those years, because I really get, even with my schooling, because I did force myself into some schooling. I wasn't able to finish one of my degrees, but I did finish 2 of them, so that's good. I specifically went into certain aspects of education to discover what's wrong with me. I didn't go to do anything else.
Question for you, Stephanie. So you have what kind of treatments did you go and seek? Like, one of the things that me and Sharifa are very big advocates about on this show is the fact that, you need to understand your body and you need to understand your health. And you're here talking to us about, you started to self-diagnose, but then you were taking your clues and your hints and you were going to your physicians to be like, this is what's going on, or, to be able to have conversations. What kind of treatments, what kind of specialists, what kind of, you've used words like the neurologist and things like that, but who have you and who did you go to help you get to this mental elevation that you have with regards to your pain and how to handle it and how to manage it?
Okay, so I just wanted to paint that little picture, because that first 11 years was really rough. Once I had that diagnosis of fibromyalgia, at the time I was seeing a herbalist, and what I chose to do was look to the more alternative medicines to assist me, because I really got by that time that there were no doctors willing to continually assist. Once I had my diagnosis, what they said is, this is just something you have to live with. You're 28 years old. There's nothing that will help you. Okay. So I became a nutritionist to discover, how do I assist myself in learning about food. I learned a lot about the impact of food on our inflammation, particularly since one of the things we don't realize is that most of us have IBS. That means that we are actually not absorbing our food properly, and our food is working against us. So that was something that I did. I started going to naturopaths, chiropractors, one chiropractor in particular. I'm not able to get manually adjusted because that actually creates pain for me. So he found a way of assisting me. The massage therapist I went through wasn't able to touch me at first. So it was really a gradual Like she was so light, she was barely touching me. It was really a gradual having to do this over time. And that's one thing I really wanted to share in this journey, because in meeting people in my profession of being a nutritionist with fibro, we typically want the pain to go away instantaneously. And I totally get that. And what I've learned is that it is a journey that we need to invest in ourselves and be kind to ourselves to know that this treatment may not work for me. There is another one that will. So I started to do a lot of that. Currently, what has assisted me in the past 3 years that I have found that has been exponential in my pain care has been osteopathy. That has been amazing for my health. And I do, that's one of my recommendations to people.
Can you tell us what osteopathy? Repeat it again.
I'm probably not the best person to explain exactly what it is.
I was listening to that and I was like, huh?
Yeah, you know what? I don't want to misrepresent. So I highly recommend that people look into what osteopathy is, because particularly if you're in the States, there are many doctors of osteopathy there. It's classical osteopathy that I went to. There are some differences in the field. It is a medical profession, highly regarded in the States, in Europe in particular. Growing definitely across Canada. So it has been very beneficial to me. It is a form of physical manipulation, just different in that it utilizes all aspects of the body. So they're looking at not just the spine, for example. So chiropractor, most people know, they're looking at the spinal system. An osteopath is looking at how all systems, including your muscles, your spinal system, and your organs, and everything else, how they work together, and understanding how one shift in the body can impact various other areas of the body. And I think that's probably the best way I can put it without adding anything else. So basically, I get treatments where, you know, the pain is in one area, and he's saying to me, I understand why that's in that area, because this other area is actually out of alignment. And so he will assist my body gently. It's actually quite gentle. At least the person I see is very gentle. And in moving those areas, it actually alleviates the pain in the other area that I went in for. So it's great I have found it to be a wonderful space to deal with pain management. That, and also having access to understanding how certain supplementation works. You mentioned earlier how mood and our pain and our sleep all interact. There actually is certain aspects of our diet that are linked to our gut, which is where all of us have IBS issues. And then it actually links to our mood and our pain and our sleep. And that wonderful thing is called serotonin. And that is very low in most people with fibro. I can declare that. So, you know, I have learned how to do things naturally. So because I do respond so negatively to medication, I went the natural road. And I still work with my chiropractor. I still work with my osteopath. I do a lot of the nutritional things for myself. And I also started looking into doing things for that, because I do now, and I really thank you for acknowledging it. I have declared myself anxiety and depression healed of my anxiety and depression in Jesus' name. And so I declare that over myself. And a lot of that has been doing work with God. Absolutely. That was a thing. And also looking at, because one of the things that happens in anxiety and depression is particularly with our chronic pain issues, because it's an invisible disability. One of the things I have found that is consistent between all of us is that we have this expectation that we must look and be like everyone else. Yep. And because of that, we pour these expectations on ourselves that are so much that it creates this imbalance in our thought processes. And we start to really think that there's something wrong with us. There's something that we're supposed to be doing more of. And we compare ourselves to people who have no experience of what chronic pain looks like or feels like. And then that actually builds up that depression and anxiety. It just feeds into that because we are constantly comparing ourselves. And I have learned through some other work that I've been doing. I have done some counseling. I have also done some work. I've taken some courses, and I'm going to use this word as well through Landmark Worldwide. Their courses have really helped me to dive deep into the layers that I have not seen that have impacted my mindset. Am I dealing with shifting my mindset? It has really created a space for me to be me with my pain and not be defined by my pain. Okay. So I can actually get up now. I no longer have that voice that says, today's not living. And now I'm looking at life as I can create it, rather than what I shared with you early, where I literally woke up every day wondering why I was awake, because death was supposed to come. I didn't actually believe I'd live to 30. So once I got to 30, it was like, what do I do now? It was just not really a thing. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey to have all those things compiled and be able to utilize all these techniques to assist in the growth.
So our next question would be, because your conversation is so in depth right now, and I hate that we always have limited time, but what type of support have you been receiving from your family and friends, and what kind of groups and specialists and associations have you been going to in order to help you with this chronic pain journey, with this mental health battle? Like, are they there? Have you been going back and forth? Has it been some struggles? Let us know, how's it been for you?
So I would say that I have kept a lot of my pain secret for a very long time.
Why?
Because people saw me as somebody who looked young and therefore was not actually experiencing what I said I was experiencing. So I spent many years with no support other than my husband at the time. Okay. And I think that's due to them just really not knowing. So I'm going to say that was really on me for not sharing the depth of what I was dealing with. Some of the family in more recent years have really been helpful in regards to, like my grandmother would stay with me with my children. So that's a whole other story. I actually don't recommend anyone with chronic pain to have little people. I love my children. They actually drive me. But I had my son first, went without diagnosis. Right. When I believed that I was like, I didn't have anything. And I went to a point where I couldn't lift my babies. And so I needed assistance then. And my husband, yeah. So I actually spent 9 months in physiotherapy after my son. I wasn't able to walk upstairs. I wasn't able to lift him to feed him. My husband at the time had to wake up with me to lift him out of his crib so that I could feed him. He'd place him on me. So my husband was key.
You're dealing with postpartum depression. You're dealing with regular depression and anxiety. That must have been like, your husband sounds like this amazing man that, like, were you able to open and talk with him freely about this? Like, how did that work? Because
there was a lot of stress on him at the time. And when I look back, I realized how amazing he truly was in this particular instance, because not only was I dealing with anxiety and depression, with my first child, I actually had postpartum psychosis. So for people who don't know what that is, those are the mothers who you hear have drowned their babies or who have killed themselves and their babies. No. So I literally had a voice in my head saying, today's the day you're dying. Every day I was to take myself and my baby. And I had actually designed the way that my baby and I would die. Okay. So I was dealing with that in addition to not being able to lift my baby, not be able to sleep, not have and I was given this peaceful child. He did not sleep during the night well, but he was so peaceful, very peaceful. Gosh. And I was given a peaceful child so that I could figure out how to deal with myself. I truly believe that. Okay. So I just want to share that, because I know I have had friends with fibro say, I'm just going to have one. And afterwards they were distressed about having a child. So it's for me, I get that part of my calling is to be a mom, and it has been a a journey that has required a lot of assistance. So you asked about assistance. During the time when I was married and had children, we did have a nanny that helped. So, and then later on, my grandmother came and helped out. So my grandmother spent 10 years coming to me to assist me with things like laundry, because lifting laundry is still a challenge for me, and dishes, and being with the children. My grandmother just turned 90. So to give you an idea of someone in her 80s doing this work for me in my 40s, right? And the care of that. And I do have some family members who have been gracious financially, because this journey has been quite a financial strain on my marriage. So I'm actually divorced now. So it was a financial strain on my marriage. It was a financial strain continuing on, and it continues to be something that I put into my budget on a monthly basis, which is a lot of things people don't understand either. In fact, I've actually moved into the financial industry to support people in understanding how to budget for their health, because I find just anyone, not even just those of us who have chronic pain, people don't realize how much this can be a financial issue, right? So so I do support families with that too.
With what it is that you're doing, we've got two quick questions for you. The first one is can you provide, one or two quick tips or techniques you have used to help you in terms of alleviating your pain, assisting with your pain, like even as you're talking about budgeting with your pain? Really quickly, just, one or two, quick points that you've been doing that might be able to help another chronic pain conqueror that's watching this with us.
So one of the things over this whole time has been movement. We have it like exercise is something we have to do. It's not exercise per se, it's movement. So making sure that whatever we can, we keep our muscles in motion. So that might be a 5-minute walk. If you're not able to do a 20-minute walk, then a 5-minute walk. And maybe it's a walking around the house. Like, we really have to get away from this concept that it has to be at the gym with weights, because for the majority of us, we end up with this fatigue afterwards, right? So it's keeping some movement. That has definitely been helpful. It's also helpful for our anxiety and depression. We need to be outside, enjoy some outside time. So go for a 5-minute walk, take time to breathe deeply, the fresh air, and then move on. So that's one thing for sure. I do recommend that people look at their, so I have a specific, I don't like calling it a diet, but there's certain things I don't eat. And it's important, that's something that most of us can figure out on our own. That doesn't cost a lot, to really just take certain foods out. There are certain foods that are pro-inflammatory into our bodies. And so there's a family of foods in particular. I look at different things that might create inflammation or might bother my IBS. If you are having digestive issues with certain foods, those certain foods most likely are inflammatory to you. So I use digestive enzymes to assist in my digestive process, so that the food that I do eat is not as reactive in my body and creating as much inflammation. So those are two things. There's a lot supplement-wise, but I don't want to go into the whole thing. But those are two areas that you can do.
We don't have that much more time.
Exactly.
I know that Sharif had a question for you with regards to your quote.
Yeah, you quoted that the healing is possible with a heart of perseverance and grace and trust in God. Were you going through something specifically at that time? Can you expand a little bit more as to the meaning? Let us know.
So the perseverance is knowing that this is a journey. Again, as I said before, we have it like we can get rid of our pain instantaneously. And over time, I have gone from levels of pain where I literally was about to pass out to being like super great. And so it's holding on to the super great and knowing that healing is possible. So I just want to share that. Grace, because I really understood throughout this journey that me being hard on myself and constantly having these high expectations and not looking for places of support or help and not making the requests for help actually made the pain worse. So when we're talking about, and the anxiety and the depression worse. because we get into our heads and it becomes very sullen. So having grace and compassion for myself in those times when I need help and asking people. So one of the things I really had to deal with is that I have my children. My children are very clear that I have a disability because they're the ones who see me on the couch in pain. Right. They're the ones putting me to bed when I'm in those states. They're the ones helping out. So I've had to have some compassion and grace for myself to know that I'm not a bad mom. I'm actually an awesome mom, and that they're learning a lot of things from being with me. So that's where my compassion and grace has been developing.
Thank you.
And all of that comes from trusting God.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for that point, because so many people are down on themselves when we do go out and get assistance from other people, and that's what hindered us from getting it in the first place. And I love your self-talk, because you're about empowering yourself and loving yourself and understanding your circumstances and not being hard on yourself, which actually alleviates some of the stress and the depression that we go through when we're loving ourselves. Like, if you combat light with darkness, it's such an amazing thing. Stephanie, we just want to say thank you so much for coming on today. In literally 15 seconds or less, can you please let our audience members know how they can get in touch with you in case they want to, like, you talk about financial literacy, budgeting, you've talked about you being a nutritionist. How can they find you?
How can they find me? So I'm very challenging to find. They can certainly connect. Like, Kalila, if you want to put my direct links, which would be my phone and my email, you can certainly post that for your people on your site.
And can you, do you want to tell them?
I am not on social media.
Okay.
So I'm a bit challenging to find, but that's part of my growth and development too right now, is that I'm learning how to build that. But it's also been a part of my healing process, because I find that too much information sometimes overloads me. So I'm growing in that area. So forgive me, but I will definitely send you my information, and you can post on your site and they can contact me through that.
We just want to thank you so much. Thank you from the bottom of our heart. We do need to say goodbye to you now, because we've got to close up the show, but you gave so many valid points. You are such a light. You know, we still want to have this conversation with regards to spirituality and chronic pain, so we may have you back for that.
Absolutely.
But thank you. There are people out here that are definitely going to watch this, whether it be right now or in the future. And the words that you have said and the empowerment that you have for yourself is definitely going to help other people. So blessings to you so much, Stephanie. You have yourself a blessed day, okay?
Thank you. Thank you both for having me. It's been a pleasure and an honor. You take care.
Okay, bye, honey. Wow, Rifa. Like, once again, it blows my mind about the
I think we just have to be prepared that every other episode for the rest of the season is going to be like this, because amazing.
There are times that I want to, like, cry, mama. Like,
honestly, I had that moment when she was talking about, like, especially the spiritual aspect. And that's where I can relate, because that's one of the things that just really pushed me through stuff I was going through. And we don't talk about it, which I think is something we should bring on the show in future.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, what she said about that was definitely true.
We may have to do a panel discussion one day where we get like 4 or 5 of us and we talk and we just go at it.
I think
we're at this place that we're like closing up. So can you give us some final thoughts? Can you give our audience, like, I love that she jumped on a couple of points. Can you give us some final thoughts too?
So some final thoughts that I came with is simplifying your life. Cut back on certain things, give yourself permission to do less if you feel down, and get that help. Ask for the help. Also, self-help books, locate helpful groups. Journaling is another thing. We talked about that in season 1 when we talked about mental health. Don't become isolated. Absolutely not. It does not help. 100% does not help. Learn ways to relax and manage your stress, structure your time, and don't make important decisions when you are down. Definitely not smart.
biggest point. People always do that. They make emotional decisions, and it's the
Yeah,
wrong thing when you know that you're not in a good place.
absolutely.
Couple of things for me, I would literally say this. I want people to remember, and I'm always advocating about this, letting you know that there are associations and specialists out
Yeah.
there that will help you with your mental health, that will help you with your chronic pain. If you go out there and you just Google basically what it is, and people don't know that there is so many different types of therapy out there and so many different types of option that are either holistic or medical or in a different culture. There's so many different options for you.
Yeah.
And also remember, if people go back to our season one, there's different types of mental health. And Stephanie really definitely touched on the fact that there are, she had different things depending on different stages of her life. So, even after giving birth, there was these types of depression and anxiety and thoughts that were going through her head. When she was dealing with, other aspects of her life, when she's having her grandmother in her life, there's different times that your mind talks to you. And what we want you to know is that because there's different types of depression and anxiety, don't ever think that what you have isn't relevant enough to go out there and make sure that you can advocate or get the help for
Get
yourself.
help. Yep.
So when you get your help, stick to your treatment plan, because if you stop, depression symptoms can definitely come in. Learn about your depression. Why is it stemming from? Educate yourself so that you empower you and your family. Something that she definitely talked about. Pay attention to the warning signs. Learn your depression triggers. Make a plan so that you know what to do if your symptoms get worse. Like today, I'm trying to look really pretty because I'm trying not to be in a headspace. We don't like to talk about it, but we have to talk about it. You want to avoid alcohol and recreational drugs.
Yep.
It may seem like, they lessen the depression symptoms, but they generally worsen it.
Yep.
So be careful about when you take that. And last but not least, take care of yourself. Eat healthy, be physically active, get plenty of sleep. Stephanie talked about it. We talk about it. Other people talk about it when we get on there. Make sure that your body is moving, as Legally Blonde would be like, endorphins make you happy. So we want to make sure that you do that. And with that being said, I'm just going to take it into our keep it moving moment really
Right
quickly,
ahead.
Shiva.
Yep.
And this is what our keep it moving moment is. Positive self-talk is to emotional pain as a pain pill is to a physical pain. I'm going to repeat that. Positive self-talk is to emotional pain as a pain pill is to physical pain. So make sure that you're talking to yourself. Make sure that you're loving yourself.
Yep.
All right. Take us out of here, Rifa.
Well, Kalila, guys, that is our show for today. I'm Sharifa McLaren Thomas from YouTube to Thomas Life.
And I am Kalila Bruswell, the Overcomer. We will be back next week to have another amazing chronic pain conversation. We're having more guests come on, and each story is amazing.
Unique.
Yeah.
We're going to thank you for joining us for another episode of Chronic Pain Conversations. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at CP Conversations. If you are a chronic pain sufferer, turn conqueror, or you live with a chronic disease or illness, and you're ready to share your story in the chronic pain community, we invite you to be our guest, and we ask you to fill out the share your story form on any of our social media bio links.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you are we invite those that are in business and services that help support and or cater to the chronic pain community. So if you're in alternative medicine, if you are in pain management suppliers, if you advocate for patients' right, if you organize or provide chronic pain resources, we invite you to go in and be a guest and to promote your business here on this show, because we want to be able to have a safe space to have conversations about what is available for us conquerors.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Chronic Pain Conversations is a show that enlightens and advocates about chronic pain. We hope you have a blessed week.
Bye.